Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I hope the week's gone well. It's a really wet day out here in Nairobi. Let's move on to Africa. President Trump's Africa strategy advances prosperity, security, and stability, says the White House. If you want to listen to it, the video is linked on the website. And Ambassador John Bolton starts at around 1 hour 42 minutes. You have to scroll through. He's obviously waiting a while. Some of the key takeaways: African stability, prosperity, and independence are in the national security interests of the United States. We ask only for reciprocity, never for subservience. Countering radical Islamic terrorism, using US tax dollars effectively and efficiently, no more indiscriminate aid without strategy, he said. Moving quickly to Chinese and Russian influence in Africa, African states are captive to Beijing's demands, he said. Seeing disturbing effects of Chinese influence like Zambia and Djibouti. Debt to Beijing and Chinese, notes Chinese base just miles from the US and Djibouti, and reports of Chinese using lasers against US pilots. Cites US fears that Djibouti will turn over Dorale container terminal, which the government seized unilaterally from the Emirati company DP World earlier this year with very little international notice. Prosper Africa, expand economic relationships, support investment, improve business climate, grow the middle class. Vision for Africa centers on independence, sovereignty, a key theme here. We'll focus on African governments who act with us as strategic partners to include transparency and good governance practices. Calls South Sudan leaders morally bankrupt, and says reviewing US aid there to ensure it does not prolong the conflict. So pretty interesting, but obviously China and Russia in the crosshairs. From small wars to great power, Trump's Africa reset could change US's military role. In Africa, a contested battlefield where those adversaries are vying for strategic influence, policy experts warn that the US hasn't been playing the game. The Pentagon has escalated counter-terrorism strikes and special operations missions across the continent in a quietly expanding mission. Some lawmakers and former officials for years have warned that the US has relied too heavily on elite operators for short-term tactical missions that aren't underpinned by a holistic strategy or complemented by non-military efforts. And in Africa, that dynamic is particularly stark. General Tony Thomas, the head of US Special Operations Command of SOCOM, told a conference audience in Austin earlier this month that there's been a realization that Africa is a great power competition area. Basically, we're missing the boat in Africa, said Mary Beth Long, a CIA veteran. We're not even clear from an intelligence standpoint on what the underpinnings of a strategy would attempt to address, and in part that's because we have inadequate resources dedicated to the African continent. Bolton subsequently unveiled Trump's new strategy for the continent in a speech to the Conservative Heritage Foundation on Thursday. When in Kinshasa, you've got to pay a visit to the forgotten kings of fashion, les Sapeurs. Congo voting machines razed and fired 10 days ahead of poll. A fire at a warehouse in the capital, Kinshasa, has destroyed thousands of voting machines intended for use in the country's long-delayed presidential election. Suspected arson attack started in the early hours of Thursday. With less than 10 days to find replacement equipment, it also casts doubt on the Electoral Commission's ability to hold the vote in Kinshasa. It is incredibly serious, Mr. Kikaya said by phone from Kinshasa. The CENI does have approximately 30,000 spare voting machines out of a total of 105,000 due to be used around the country as extra devices. In this photograph, you see the CENI warehouse burned down last night in Kinshasa with 7,000 voting machines, ballot boxes, and other materials inside. A puppet is set to replace the president, says The Economist. We want the election day to be a party, not a day people lose their lives, says President Joseph Kabila. Kabila probably will step down, having been pressed to do so by Angola, South Africa, other African states that fear chaos if he lingers. But it would be foolish to expect voting to be jolly. More than 100 rebel groups are at large, and jihadist militia, reportedly with links to Islamic State, is terrorizing an eastern area that is also being ravaged by Ebola. Many Congolese will be too nervous to vote. Some 105,000 electronic voting tablets from South Korea have been nicknamed machines à voler, stealing machines, delivering them to 84,000 polling stations, many in remote areas, accessible only by helicopter. Boat or motorbike will be tricky. If batteries go flat, it will be hard to recharge them. Only 1% of people in Congo, rural Congo, have access to electricity. Congo is as big as the European Union, so Shadari will have so many provinces to cover, says Kabila breezily. I don't think he'll miss Europe. Shadari faces a weak opposition. Two of his most serious rivals, Bemba and Moishi Katumbi, were prevented from running. The rest of the opposition is splintered. In a short-lived moment of hope last month, 7 opposition leaders said they had chosen a single candidate. But within a day, 2 of them peeled off to form a rival coalition. At a summit in August, he told leaders he would not say goodbye, but rather a bientôt, see you soon. Did this mean he plans to return? I was paraphrasing a movie I've seen very often when Arnold Schwarzenegger says, I'll be back. So don't take lots of my jokes out of context. What happens when the lizard becomes the crocodile is a Congolese adage. Could Mr. Shadari, once in office, bare his teeth at Mr. Kabila? If Mr. Shadari were to follow the example of Angola's President João Lourenço, he would tell the taxman to take a hard look at his predecessor's family. However, lacking a base of his own, most notably in the army or security services, Shadari is unlikely to do so. South Sudan's neighbours helped launder the loot from its civil war, pilfered petrodollars, paid for plush pads in Nairobi, Economist again. Partly because the state is easy to plunder, big men fight for control of it. South Sudan's conflict, which started 5 years ago, has caused perhaps 500,000 deaths. Kenya's financial authorities have yet to take any action against banks suspected of holding South Sudanese loot. Both Kenya and Uganda lobbied against America's efforts to impose UN sanctions despite paying lip service to them. There are signs that the West is getting tougher about enforcing sanctions. In a visit to Uganda in June, an American Treasury official warned local banks that they would be cut off from America's financial system if they did not stop South Sudanese bigwigs from buying property with dodgy cash. Kenya's banks may soon be grey-listed by the Financial Action Task Force, the world's primary anti-money laundering body, which would discourage other banks from dealing with them. David D. doubts regional authorities will ever really clamp down. Money laundering is big business, he says. There is absolutely no domestic political interest to rock the boat. South African oil shares down 13.04%. Dollar versus Rand. The Rand is at 14.2373. It got to about 13.55, if you will recall, not too long ago. I like this photograph. Kunu, Eastern Cape by Sure Kamunga. The Egyptian pound 17.955, Nigerian oil share down 20.07% this year, Ghana Stock Exchange down 2.91% this year, cash game. Our scandal started with a poor housemaid and ended up taking down the most powerful woman in Africa, well worth a read. The whole entire government of Malawi is a criminal enterprise, Mifio told me. This is what I discovered. Sheikh al-Mudi's detention is a national issue, said Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia. An interesting story of Bloomberg, a billionaire vanished for 400 days in his empire, boomed. Tough times in Namibia, the economy shrunk for a 10th straight quarter in Q3. At the same time, inflation's accelerating. Growth in the EAC is outperforming average growth in sub-Saharan Africa. Africa's biggest grocer, ShopRite, opens its doors in Kenya to battle Carrefour. ShopRite is seeking a foothold in Kenya's retail industry, where the collapse of two local supermarket chains has created opportunities for Africa's biggest grocer and its international rivals. Up for grabs is a market with a formal retail penetration of 33%, makes Kenya the second biggest retail center in Africa behind South Africa. ShopRite's plan is to expand in that market, hampered by competition, particularly from Carrefour, which is driving up rental costs as ShopRite. Due to the aggressive expansion of Carrefour, there are no cheap sites left behind with the demise of Nakumatt and Uchumi. Even so, ShopRite is scheduled to open 3 more stores in Kenya next year. Nairobi all shares down 17.7% year-to-date. NSE 20 is down 25.58% year-to-date. Owuko, the Auditor General, wants 4 NSSF fund managers fired. The 4 fund managers have been accused of recklessly investing a cumulative 996.4 million shillings in the 2 lenders who then went bust, Chase Bank and Imperial Bank. The 3-year contracts of the current fund managers were renewed in 2014-2015, and it's recommended that the fund managers be changed on expiry of their contracts. Well worth a read. Once again, thank you for stopping.